Hello, welcome to this, what is going to be a series of demo videos about the sorts of things we'll do here in Chapter 8 of the Server Virtualization course. Now, I'm not going to follow the book instructions directly. I'm working with a newer version of the eSXI host. I am working in VMware Workstation instead of um, VMware Player, and it's 15 instead of 15.56 instead of 12, etc., etc. So, but the main the main concepts will be the same. This is actually a process I've done before. Um, these were some VMs that actually I've probably included these VMs in previous demo videos. What I'm going to do now is start over from scratch, just to document and explain the process a little bit. I also have a problem in that I kind of forgot one of my passwords, and I made some I took some stabs at using Kali to break into my VMware system, and it didn't quite work. Subsequently, my vCenter didn't quite work. Now, one thing to note when we get to the vCenter thing is whatever instructions you have, follow them precisely. Also, be prepared for it to not work. It is a very, very touchy process. So the instructions I have, I'm going to be following. The instructions you have, follow those directly, particularly if you're using a vCenter server appliance. If you have it prepackaged as an OVA, leave it alone. You do not want to mess with it at all. So what I'm going to do, actually the first place I have to start is a Windows network. eSXI wants some kind of LDAP directory system. In my particular case, I've got this Windows 19 server, and I've got my Windows 10 client. The best way, honestly, to deal with, okay, and it's thinking, the best way to deal with this stuff, frankly, just pop your server up. Don't touch it except to add new A records. And I will actually, the A records I have from, I actually had 4 vCenter eSXI vSphere appliances, vSphere eSXI hosts going, and I nuked them all. I had a vCenter with 2 different data stores in it. I nuked that because I want to show you all the process from the beginning. So I've actually got traces of my old implementation still in my DNS zone, and I'm going to leave them that way. I might change things around just a little bit. I had 10 and 10 and 20 and 15 and 25. I might rearrange that a little bit, but for now, the first thing I want to do is I'm going to create a couple of new, actually I'm going to create one new virtual machine, and then I'm going to clone that virtual machine and rename it, open it, and then do what I need to do. The thing to note here is that as you're creating and copying these things, if all you do is clone that VM and then open it and don't tell it what happened, tell VMware how to handle that process, you will end up with 2 VMs, both booting from a partition with the same UID. And your hypervisor will notice that and get very confused. So let's start this process. What I have here, so I've got my, and what, of course, I like to watch my network situation pretty closely. So I got my ISOs directory, and I've actually got them all my ISOs, and in here on my D drive. Okay, come on over. So I've got my server appliance. I got my VMware Visor installer. This is the one this is the ISO I'm going to use. My vCenter appliance, when I'm good and ready for it, will be the next step. This is actually what I'm working with here is a couple of different units worth of lab, one after another, just kind of run together. So I've got my memory I'm watching my memory. I'm more or less just going to watch this in terms of that number. I already know I've got 32 gigs of RAM. So VM, file, new virtual machine. Notice that I've got these already in a folder. I'll deal with that later. So what I'm going to do, and this is the first place where our process diverges from what we would normally do. Say, for example, if you're building using a standard off-the-shelf ISO from Windows or Linux or whomever, you don't want to install later. You want to install now. Tell it the ISO so it can start figuring things out. I'm going to call this one eSXI 67-AMP-1. And I'm going to leave it on my local machine. I've actually got a lot of space. So you know what? This WinNT. So I'm going to put it on my D drive. There's a little bit of a risk here running it this way. If your Linux system, if your Windows system is at all dubious about this kind of drive, an external drive, maybe don't have them live here. I'm going to go this way for now. Okay, so I'm going to go browse, and I'm going to put it in D VMs. And I actually have traces of an old one here, but I'm going to leave them alone. I'm going to leave them there. Most of my other stuff is from this directory is going to end up right here. Next. Now you may have to make a directory for some of these things at some point in the future. So I'm going to give it 40 gigs, and I'm going to put it on a single disk. It'll be harder to move, but it will be quicker. What I'm not going to do is thick provision this. Next, I'm going to give it 4 gigs of RAM. It wants two CPUs. Notice that I'm not telling it. This is a step at which I would the stage at which I would normally tell it where the ISO is, but I've already done that. So click Finish, and it's going to automatically power on. Notice, so this is our eSXI installer. Okay. So there's some things you won't do on these that you would normally do in other places. Like, for example, VMware Tools. There's really no need to do VMware Tools like this because it's not... VMware Tools will help you do things like file integration and mouse integration, and guess what? There's no mouse to integrate. So it's really kind of pointless to do VMware Workstation. VMware Tools on a VM like this. And now I'm doing this. I'm installing my vSphere host image in a hypervisor. So one of the other things I'm going to have to do before I turn any of this, before I can enable a VM inside this host, because eventually I'm going to deploy one of my vCenter appliances to one of these hosts, essentially. So obviously I'm going to have to go back into the CPU settings in this thing's hardware and turn those on, provided that they are not already. Okay, and so what I'm going to do, actually, it's going to wait right here. I'm going to stop this video. The next video, I'm going to walk through the installation process. Thanks, and we'll be right back.